Um, I don't have a problem with people confusing Wyoming for Australia. I do have an issue with people mistaking Australia for Austria, because that's a massive skill issue.
There's a desk in the airport in Vienna that is specifically for people who flew to Austria instead of Australia.
I know. I've been there. And in Innsbruck, the same. It's. Uh.
What? Why is Harrison pinging me? Does he not have access?
He's here. He wants to come up on stage.
Oh. So. All right. Well, let's get this show. Let's get the show on the road. All right. Man, I love how this thing doesn't make sounds. All right, so you can tune into the stream I have here. We have a big fancy presentation for you all. So just to summarize, for the last few weeks we had been hard at work on open world. That's why the updates in the update log channel have been pretty restricted to things like just uniform updates and stuff and bug fixes. So all that stuff's been going on behind the scenes. Obviously, there's no point in really addressing these changes that we're making in the devlog because they're not accessible at all. So we have been doing this. So let's just jump right into it. So general open world information. Firstly, we have our world map. Our world map consists of 34 ports and 10 independent forts across 8 regions. You can see on the right side of the screen here a general layout of what the map will look like. This is not the finalized layout. This is just a mock-up that one of our map guys made. Multiple people actually made mock-ups, so I just took the best one. And yes, 34 total ports and 10 independent forts. I say independent forts because we have forts that are also tied to ports. So we do have 10 standalone forts that will serve a different purpose. So each region that we have is a separate server. You will be able to travel between these regions by either using the teleport system in the main menu, or you'll be able to teleport your ships across these regions using the ship teleporting system. And I do want to give a shout out to our Angry Monkey gang for all the hard work that they've done to set up this map. Our Angry Monkey game is our map contributors who have been making the ports, populating the islands, and just setting up everything. They've taken a huge weight of work off my shoulders, so kudos to them. So, cross-region travel. Bordering regions can be accessed from your current region by sailing into a teleport zone and hitting a hotkey on your ship's helm. You can see at the bottom of this slide what these teleport zones will look like. They're basically just gigantic rectangles on the map. Your ship in its current state will be saved in almost its entirety. There are some things that are not preserved, including the exact position of your ship in relation to the teleport offset, of the teleport zone, sorry, and all of the people in your ship's crew. Once your ship is teleported to the new region, once the captain joins the game, everything will be loaded, and any players in the game who are already in your crew will be teleported onto the ship seamlessly without taking any crew lives. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's pretty seamless. It works pretty well. There is just a loading screen, that's it. But other than that, it's not really too intrusive. C- on this presentation, I hate you. So, regional travel specifics. Ships with a crew of more than 50 players cannot teleport between regions. This is a Roblox limitation. Basically how that works is the teleport call to teleport players between servers is using one call for everyone in the crew, and that has a max of 50 players on it, which is why this is the case. Will the crew ever have 50 people in it? Probably not. So, I don't see an issue there. Only players that have the lieutenant role or higher in the ship's crew can initiate the teleport. Like I said before, the teleport is initiated on the ship's helm. If a player's teleport fails, and this will happen to everyone at least once, they can rejoin the game within 3 minutes and go to the destination region from the main menu to get back onto the ship without consequence. This goes for everyone, including the captain. A ship that teleports cannot teleport again for a few minutes. Obviously, that makes sense. And then certain data on the ship is not preserved. This being incomplete jury masts, you want to have those set up before you teleport. Hammer hit progress for leak holes and broken rudders. So obviously you have to hit holes and rudders a couple times before they're repaired. If you do that mid-teleport, it's not going to save it and it's going to reset. So you're going to have to repair it fully again. Barrel fire sizes, they're going to reset to 0 regardless, as though the fire was just lit. This is so while you're stuck on a teleport screen, your ship doesn't explode. Telegraphic signals that are broken by D-masts, these will not be put back up in the new server, they'll just be taken down. Deployed rowboats, they're independent of your ship, so you have to stow them if you want them to teleport with you, otherwise they're going to stay in the server that you teleported from. Anchor raising progress on capstans, so there's like a % bar when you go to raise an anchor on a capstan. If you don't fully raise the anchor, you're going to have to do it again. And then towing status. Ships do not teleport a towed ship with them. So you're going to have to basically reinitiate the tow in the new server. This is kind of annoying. If you have a demasted ship that you're towing across the entire game, then yeah, you're going to want to probably have that be seamless. So that's the one thing that is probably going to change on this list. But everything else I have no intent on changing. So, ports. We love ports. Every port in the game has an internal port size value that determines what infrastructure can be present at the port and how much that infrastructure can be upgraded. Port sizes range between 1 and 6. Nations gain ownership of ports by winning a siege in that port. More detail on that later. All ports except starting ports are neutral in the beginning. No nation players or civilians can spawn at them. Every nation is given a single port that acts as their starting port at the beginning of the game. Starting ports are not capitals. Once a nation captures a second port, their starting port will become vulnerable to attack and it will be able to be sieged, and then you will be able to lose it. If a nation is only in possession of a single port, that port cannot be sieged. There is a slight exception to this rule here because we do have a single inland town in the game at the moment that you cannot spawn ships at. In this case, if you own that town and a single port, that town is siegeable, but that single port is not. No, it's not Whitehook. It's Keppelton. And then every single port has a set amount of currency income that is automatically paid to the owner of that port, that nation, once per real life day. And that happens at midnight UTC. That is about 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, and then whatever time zone you're in, you could just shift it. So important notice about timers. Open World has several several hour-long timers, such as daily port income, shipbuilding, and resource production. Some of these timers are even several days long. Larger ships will take a couple of days to build, actually. I think the Agamemnon's like a day and a half. These timers are persistent and saved between servers. So anytime I mention a timer, that timer is persistent. It is not going to disappear magically if a server closes. If the server is closed when the timer ends, then whatever that happens at the end of that timer will happen when the server opens again. So you don't need to worry about any of that. You don't need to stay in a game for the entirety of a shipbuilding period or resource production period. It's all going to be saved. Now, port upgrades. These are the big beans. So the following port upgrades, which ports do have, are as follows. Workforce. Certain actions that are performed in a port by the port's infrastructure require workforce. This is basically some kind of like energy value, where when the more tasks the port is doing, that value is reduced, and if you don't have enough of that value, you can't do anything else. This is basically just limiting how many things the port can do, so you can't have too much going on at once. Upgrades to a port's workforce will increase the total workforce that the port has. And then next is the garrison. You all probably can tell what this is. The port's garrison determines how many port respawns the defending nation has in that port during a siege. Upgrading a garrison will increase the total number of garrison lives. Shipyards will allow for the storage and construction of ships in that port. Upgrades to a shipyard will increase the speed that ships are built at and unlock larger ships for construction. You will not be able to build larger ships immediately. You will have to unlock the higher tier shipyards in order to begin construction on those ships. And then finally, resources. Resource production facilities will allow port owners to produce resources in that port. Each individual resource produced by the port has a facility that can be upgraded. So there's like an iron mine, there's a gold mine, there's a silver mine, etc., depending on what you have. And then upgrades to a resource facility will increase the production speed and the amount of resources produced by that facility in one action. Additional port upgrades will be added sometime after open world releases. We are not doing these immediately because their associated systems do not exist yet. These upgrades will be armories. Armories will allow for the port to produce special weaponry, including grenades, field cannons, and ammo wagons. Field cannons are just basically marine artillery. You'll be able to run them around on land. Upgrades to that facility will increase production speed and yield, and then stables will allow you to produce horses. Upgrades to that facility will just do the same thing, increase production speed and yield. Moving on. A port's infrastructure can be viewed at the port's infrastructure manager NPC. At this NPC, you can view what buildings are available, their tiers, and upgrade them. You can see some examples of this in the screenshots below. Yes, there's T. These images are AI generated, and they're the only place in the game that uses AI generated images, but we made sure that they look good, and they do look good. I want to give a shout out to Salad down here because Salad was spending a lot of time just printing AI images, trying to get good images for some of them. The question that Vale just pinged me with, we'll get to that. So, port upgrade values. Below shows most of the effects that upgrades have on port infrastructure. So you can see the specific building that is there, and then what the stats will be for that building at each tier. It should be noted that these values are offsetted by 1. They're 1 lower than what they should be. So 0 on this column is actually tier 1, 1 is tier 2, etc. I should note that the ships shown in this list, not all of them are in the game yet. The Victory will not be present in open world. Oh my god. Not immediately. But we will be adding the Temeraire, which is the 74-gun French ship of the line, and if that ship performs well, then larger ships like the Victory will be possible. And then max upgrade levels. So the maximum amount of upgrades that an individual port facility can have is dependent on the port's size. So you can see here that basically, for the most part, the max upgrade tier that you can go to for a specific building is directly correlated to the port size. You can just see for that, things like the shipyard, for example, it kind of skips over tier 5 and goes straight to tier 6. And then for some things like shipyards, armories, and stables, smaller ports actually don't even have them. So moving on from there, work orders. So in order to have port infrastructure complete tasks, this means things like upgrading ports, building ships, producing resources, etc. Players with the appropriate nation permissions must obtain items called territory work orders. Work orders can be produced by speaking to the infrastructure manager NPC in the port, and currently you can obtain them for a 2,500 pound fee. And they are produced in 2 hours, so you don't get them immediately. For each additional work order produced in the same day, the price increases by 50%. So you can see in the screenshot that the price is 3,750 pounds. That will increase to 5,000, and then again to whatever is next. What is it, 6,250? I don't know. And then the price increase will reset at midnight UTC every real life day. One work order can be produced at a time per port, and the value of the work order is also per port. And anyone with the manage work orders permission in their nation is capable of taking the work order regardless of who paid for it. So say, for example, that Salad on the RN team paid for the work order. Vale could come along, who is also an admiral in the RN, and just take it for himself. The work order will be produced after 2 hours, even if the server goes down. Like I said before, it's on a timer, and these timers are persistent between servers. Port taxes. We love this. You cannot run from the IRS. Port taxes can be set for each individual port. There are 2 different taxes. There are export taxes, which apply to cargo sold at the port. Export taxes effectively increase the purchase price of cargo. And import taxes, which apply to cargo sold to the port. What they do is they effectively decrease the selling price of cargo. Currency generated from taxes is sent directly to the national funds of the nation that owns the port, and you can set these taxes between anywhere from 0 to 50%. One highly requested feature that people have already been asking for is being able to enact tariffs on specific nations where their taxes would be specifically higher. That is very possible, but it's not going to happen immediately. So, resources. Yippee! There are multiple resources present in the game that are used for commerce, which is trading, infrastructure, and ship construction. Resources are categorized into resources and commodities. This doesn't really mean anything. The basic thing to note here is that each port in the game is capable of producing 2 different resources and 1 commodity, and commodities are generally produced in lower amounts than resources because they have less uses. Resources are used for shipbuilding and upgrading certain port infrastructure, and commodities are mainly used for upgrading port infrastructure. You can also trade all of these resources for just currency. They are basic cargo. You can trade them, but do you want to? Who knows? Each resource produced in a port is an individual port infrastructure building that can be upgraded, so you can upgrade your lumber separately from your stone, just for an example. And then resources are evenly distributed throughout the map as best as possible, with some resources being rarer than others. Currently, before the map expansions, gold was only produced in like 2 ports of like, what was it, 30? But now we have like, oh no, it was like 20 ports. But now we have like 34, so that number will go up. All resources can be traded to merchants for currency as well. Resource production. So, in order to produce a resource in a port, you must speak to that resource's respective manager NPC. Resources will be produced in a passively after a set period of time, where they will then be sent to the port's warehouse upon completion. You do have to trigger this. You do have to manually go and start the production yourself. An additional amount of resources will be sent to the port's market, which will be covered later. The port must have the available workforce, and the individual starting the production must have a territory work order in their inventory. And then, as previously stated, the server does not need to be up the whole time that the resources are being produced, because it's on a timer, and timers are persistent. Shipyards. We love shipyards. So, shipyard functions. Shipyards are where nations can build ships. Players with the appropriate nation permissions can build ships at shipyards in ports owned by their nation. Shipyards also function as ship storage units, as players can only have a limit of 5 ships in their personal docks. Building a ship requires resources, currency, and a territory work order, and takes a certain amount of time for that ship to be built. Shipyards can be accessed by speaking to our beloved Joe the boat guy. I see you guys in the chat fucking screaming. He was previously known as Joe the uniform guy. He is now newly reformed. After his job was stolen from him in the recent uniform changes, he went on to become a master shipwright. More like the master shipwright, because he's the only one, and is most likely a secret gazillionaire. So you can just see in the screenshots here, we have the some of the UIs. You can see the Ontario being built here requires a certain amount of resources, a workforce. It shows the time to build and the build cost. And then we just have the shipyard here that shows what ships are in it. Similar to a player's personal ships, you can manage a ship in a shipyard, although it has a few different features. Any transactions performed in the manage ship window, so for example, repairing the ship or putting rowboats on it, it will come from the nation's national funds and not your personal wallet. You can toggle whether the owner of the ship will be able to rename the ship. You can see that right here in the renaming enabled little button here. This is for nations who want to basically organize their ships by commissioning them with names to their officers, which should be easier for them to, track their movements and stuff like that. So having this disabled will stop the owner of the ship from renaming the ship themselves. Commissioning a ship, which is the green button right here, will allow you to give the ship to a player in the server who's on your team. So this is basically distributing the ship out to someone for them to be able to spawn and use on their own. An additional button will be present on this menu that will allow you to break up the ship, which will give you a certain percentage of the resources used to produce the ship back to your nation, sending them to your port's warehouse. So if you have a ship you don't want anymore, you'll be able to break it up and get some resources back. Okay, important question brought up here. Can you revoke a commission? The answer right now is no. Can we fix that later? Yes, absolutely. But for now, it's not going to be like that. So there is a trust level you want to have with your officers. And I would also just like to point out that building ships is not the only way you'll be able to get ships. You'll be able to buy them directly as well, which will be covered later, but that is only for small ships. Now, port warehouses. You'll be able to access the port's warehouse by speaking to the port's warehouse manager NPC. Port warehouses store cargo only. This includes basic trading cargo and resources. Players with the appropriate permissions in their nation will be able to take cargo out of warehouses of their ports that their nation owns. Players holding cargo can store that cargo into any port warehouse. They do not need any permissions to do this. There's a button that appears right here on the bottom of the screen if you have cargo that says to store it. Building ships up and upgrading port infrastructure will require the necessary amounts of resources to be stored in the port warehouse of the port that you're trying to upgrade everything at. Port warehouses are not always secure. During the land phase of a siege, the warehouse of the port being sieged will be publicly accessible for anyone to steal cargo from. So one strategy that you're going to want to have here is if you are getting sieged in a port, you're going to literally want to remove everything from that port warehouse and bring it somewhere else. No, there is not a way to prevent this. And yes, this is all implemented on launch. Yes, Eastern von Strauss, I'm reading this, what? Yes, if you kill someone who's carrying cargo, it will drop. And if you kill someone who's floating in the water when it drops, it'll drop at the ocean level. Work orders cannot be stored in a port warehouse because they're items, they're not cargo. So moving on, personal ships. Ship purchasing. Players will also, I will answer a bunch of questions at the end. I'm just going to get through this so the people who are limited on time can go, and then anyone who wants to stay to ask questions, they're more than free to do so. Ship purchasing. So players can purchase ships directly from a harbor master NPC. Purchasing a ship directly will cost more than the currency required to build it, and only small ships will be purchasable. The values in the screenshot here are not up to date. These are actually the build values. And then this also shows every ship in the game right now. This is not updated yet. The Hoy is free, so you're not landlocked. The Hoy was specifically added to be free because we didn't want people to be landlocked, so they could obviously, play the game. The max ship you'll be able to buy is probably going to be something around the Swan, which is the sloop of war that we're adding. Ship management. Very similarly to a shipyard, a player can manage their own ships in a Harbor Master NPC. They can repair their ships, rearm their ships, buy rowboats, customize their ships, etc. Players can have a max of 5 personal ships. Ships cannot be accessed from ports other than the one that they're docked in, so you need to be at the port that the ship is at in order to interact with it. Any currency transactions done on a player's personal ship will spend the currency from their own wallet, not the nation funds. Players can send their ships to the port's shipyard if they're a member of the nation that owns the port that they're in. So in the event that they, don't want their ship anymore, they need to send it back because they're too poor and they want the nation to repair it, then they can do that. And it will be very important to maintain your ships and use them sparingly, as ships are permanently lost when sunk in open world. Yes, this is a thing. This has been common knowledge ever since day one. If this is a surprise to you, you are a bozo. They do have to be recommissioned if you send them back. But that's just literally just a very simple process of just menus. Ship repairing and rearming. Ships must be repaired and rearmed in order to be kept battle ready. Both of these actions require currency to perform and are instant, so you just hit the button and the ship's repaired immediately. When repairing a ship, the only thing that is actually repaired is its armor. So the other damageable parts of the ship, so the masts, sails, bowsprit, and rudder, these are all repaired for free. And there's actually nothing you need to do to repair the ship because that data is not saved to the ship when it's stored in the shipyard or your docks. Basically, all that does is you despawn the ship and respawn it, and it'll have its sails, its bowsprit, its rudder back. So that is kind of a nice thing to have. And then, yes, you can dock ships in ports you don't own and repair them there. All 6 consumables that can be obtained from ammo crates, so the 3 shot types, grappling hooks, wooden planks, and sailcloth, these are all considered ammo that you need to restock on. So that is what the rearming is. And then when a ship is built or purchased, obviously it comes fully armored and fully stocked up on ammo. Cargo holds. You've all probably seen this UI at least once. The cargo hold allows you to store ammo and allows you to store actual cargo in it. Each unit of cargo has a weight value that adds up inside the ship's cargo hold, and if you try to store more than the capacity, you will not be able to. Cargo holds can be only accessed by members of that ship's crew. Any crew member can both store and take out cargo from the ship's hold. If you want to steal that ship's cargo, you will either have to capture the ship or sink it. If you sink a ship, you will lose most of the ship's cargo because it will only spawn a percentage of that ship's cargo in the water. So you definitely want to capture ships if you want to steal cargo from them. Functionality will be added later for players to view the cargo holds of ships that they aren't crewing, but they will not be able to steal cargo from them. So, trade. Cargo trading. Each port has a basic cargo that exists for the sole purpose of trading. These cargoes just have silly names, I think Labard is Labard Crumpets or something like that. This cargo can be purchased and sold to merchant NPCs and ports. You cannot sell the same cargo that you bought to the same merchant. Generally speaking, the further distance between the port that you bought the cargo at and the port that you're selling the cargo to, the higher the cargo's value will be. The distances of ports are actually the true sailing distance and not the actual linear distance between ports. So if there's a gigantic island in the way, then yeah, it's going to be more rewarding to go to that port. Cargo purchase values can be manipulated by port export taxes, and then sell values are determined by multiple factors. First being import tax. Second is a demand value, which is a random value that changes every in-game day. This exists to add variance to popular trade routes, so the best trade routes are not always the same. And then cargo depreciation value, which is basically the more that you sell a cargo to a port, the less value that cargo will have. And that's going to reset every real-life day at midnight UTC. The reason that we have this is so even if there is a best route, you still can't take that best route constantly. Just so we want to have ports being evenly used for trade, so everyone gets taxes and stuff like that because that is income. Now, resource trading. So this was previously mentioned, the port market. When a resource is produced at a port, an additional amount of that resource is sent to that port's market for other players to purchase. This system exists because it was very possible before for nations to be completely blocked out of getting access to certain resources. So this exists for that to basically not happen. With this being the reasoning behind that system, players who are members of the nation that owns the port cannot purchase resources from that port's market. These are specifically there for other players to buy themselves. So basically, how this works is like, if you don't own like a lumber port, for example, you still obviously need lumber to build ships. You can go to other ports, see if they have lumber for sale, and then just buy them and bring them back to the port that you have. Resources, as with all other cargo, are subjected to import-export taxes and port demands. And then the basic purchase price of resources in the market is not paid to the port's owning nation. So this is not free money that a nation will get. And these are not final prices, of course, but this is just the example. Nations! We hate nations. So, nation information, you've all seen this before. Nation info can be viewed in the nation window, accessible via the flag button below your health and stamina bar. The nation window shows basic information about the nation, lets you set your division, and as usual. And the nation info window shows the nation's funds, revenue, bought and port. This is not done. Okay. Etc., etc. Nation settings. This UI none of you will ever see. Nation leaders can set permissions for their nation. These permissions are set to the nation's main group's rank values. So you need to be at the rank value set or above in order to do whatever these permissions say. Permissions are needed for things like spending national funds, setting port taxes, using shipyards, upgrading ports, etc. These are set by your nation leader, not me. So if you can't do something, yell at your nation leader. Starting assets for nations. So at the beginning of open world, every nation will be in possession of the following. 1 port, which will be their starting port. 3 Ontarios, which will be stored in their port shipyard for free and be available for distribution to whichever members of the nation the leadership decides on. And that's it. That's literally it. There will be no starting funds. Nations will have to naturally begin the process of generating currency through trade and resources through their ports in order to build up their navy and infrastructure. So, yeah. Judnor is correct. He is fucked. Fort raids. So, independent forts serve as coastal batteries, additional spawn points for nations, and forts are capable of generating additional territory work orders for their owners. Fort raids are basically mini sieges that can be declared against independent forts. Independent forts are forts that aren't attached to a port. So like, for example, San Salvador, the gigantic ass fort there, that is part of San Salvador. That is not an independent fort. Fort raids have a 30-minute preparation time in between raid declaration and the beginning of the raid. This is intended to be short notice and spontaneous. So yeah, that's why it's so short. This is to create common points of conflict on the map. Fort raids are sieges without a naval phase, so capturing every flag in the fort will win you the raid. Forts will have a 12 to 24 hour cooldown on being raided once the fort raid ends. This is just so the people who captured the fort can at least get some value out of it before they lose it again. Sieges. We have a love-hate relationship with those. So, sieges can be declared against ports for a currency fee. This fee is higher with the port's size. Sieges are how ports change ownership. If a nation wants to capture a port for themselves, it has to be sieged. Sieges have a 48-hour preparation timer. Yes, that is correct. 2 days. The reason that the timer is so long is to give enough time for nations to move their assets around, because they're going to want to have ships stationed. They're going to want to be able to move resources out of their port if they have to, etc., etc. And this is also to build tension in the area. I am hoping that areas where sieges are declared will become hotspots for fighting, because you'll be expecting that the nation being sieged will be doing stuff there. Open world sieges are functionally the same as they are in the battle server, with a few differences. The siege does not end instantly when the attackers run out of lives, as the attackers can sail back to the port being sieged with a new ship. A mechanic will likely exist that will accelerate the countdown timer if there's no attackers in the circle, but the siege will not end instantly. Ships will be given a minimum crew required to count in siege value, which is a mouthful, but basically this means that undercrewed ships will not count towards the total number of ships in the siege zone, This is to prevent things like cutter spam and stuff, which we had in previous communities like TCS. Although I guess it'd be Hoi spam now. So just an example of this, if a surprise requires 7 crew members to count as a siege ship, but only 6 people are on that ship will not be counted towards the total number of ships in the zone. Ports will have a several day cooldown after being sieged before they can be sieged once again. This is so, like, people can get value out of the port. Also, one thing that is not noted here, in sieges, when a flag is captured by the attackers, every single time this happens, one of the infrastructure buildings in the port will be downgraded by 1 tier. So port infrastructure is not permanent. It will be downgradable during sieges. So moving on, we are getting towards the end of this, don't worry. So we have weather systems. You guys are all familiar with this, but in open world, the wind has random behavior. The wind will shift every 15 to 20-ish minutes and will shift by an angle of anywhere between 15 and 45 degrees. This is obviously subject to change, and the wind speed changes with the weather while the wind direction shifts at random. The reason that the wind shifts so slowly is because it's really annoying when the wind bamboozles you by doing a complete 180. So that does not happen here. But obviously this is still subject to change. What is it, Matthew? I heard you fucking speak. Yeah, that's right. Get muted. Weather patterns. You are all also familiar with this, I hope. Currently there are 6 types of weather in the game. There are clear skies, partly cloudy, mostly cloudy, overcast, rain, and storms. The first 5 of those are functionally the same, except rain has rain effects. Storms have more intense rain effects, and the wind picks up to dangerous speeds, allowing deployed sails to tear. Storms are more likely to occur when it's already raining, but besides that, every other weather condition has an equal chance to happen at every other time. The weather will change every 15 minutes or so, and it gradually shifts. Hurricanes are definitely something we want to do. The map is specifically supposed to be placed in a place where things like hurricanes can happen, but we can also get things like snowstorms. So the idea is that hurricanes will be a much more rare weather type, and then we'll have snowstorms, blizzards, and stuff, and yes, icebergs. Icebergs are actually really easy to do, so it's not the Caribbean. So miscellaneous things. Player warehouses. Players have personal warehouses where they can store their own items. Personal warehouses can be accessed in any port and are the same in any port. So you can just see an example here. This is for storing items. And then inventory weights. You may have seen the big scary inventory weight value in the UI. Yeah, that's right. It's happening. Inventory items all have a weight value. You can see right here. Oh, there we go. You can see right here. They all have weights. So if the weight of the items in your inventory exceeds the maximum weight value of 30 kilograms, you will be unable to sprint. This shouldn't be too much of a problem for people. It's just to prevent people from having a million different weapons on them, basically. And then this is why personal warehouses exist, so your inventory was not as cluttered and you won't be overburdened all the time. And yes, you will be able to delete inventory items directly. Item shops. Item shops will exist. You might have seen these before in the form of the Joe the Uniform Guy uniform shop. It's the same system. Item shops will exist to allow you to purchase certain items in game. Most weapons will be present in item shops as a one-time purchase. You will not start with every weapon like you do now. As a matter of fact, you will probably start with just a cutlass and the flintlock pistol and have to buy everything else. But it's a one-time purchase. You will not be able to lose it at all. There's no durability. There's no item stealing, etc. Can we work out to be able to carry more? I don't know, maybe. So, post-release timeline. The initial release of Open World will be a trial period spanning 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, the following will happen. Firstly, the economy will be monitored and adjustments will be made. It is intended that the economy will be as balanced as possible. So while you will need a bunch of resources for stuff, we do not want inflation to happen like in TCS, where everyone was gazillionaires that were able to do anything for free. So we will be doing that, checking that to make sure that's all good. Final map adjustments will be made if necessary. And then 3 new ships will be added in this period, although it may stretch past that. We'll be getting the British Swan class of 18 guns. That ship's historically had 14 to 16, but we're giving it 18 just so it's a little better. The ship is a beautiful ship built by Mr. Sir Thomas Kingston. He did a great job on it, and I actually have some screenshots here that you'll be able to see. The Spanish Mahonesa class is a 42-gun, 12-pounder, 5th-rate frigate. That will be built by our beloved Little V. Denny. I also have screenshots of that ship. And then the French Armide class, which is our 44-gun, 18-pounder, 5th-rate frigate. That ship does not exist yet. I'm the one who's going to build that, and that's going to be in those 2 weeks. Here's some screenshots of those ships. They're absolutely beautiful. Definitely Meow and Denson, Tommy's general directions if you think they're cool. Meow, Mew, I don't care. And then after the 2-week period has passed, provided there aren't any extensions, there shouldn't be, the game will be struck with a full data wipe where everything is reset, including player data, and the official start of open world will begin. This serves 2 purposes. Firstly, any critical bugs that we find, item dupes, or unnecessary economy numbers can be fixed without issue. And secondly, it gives nations a time to basically fuck around and find out. You'll be able to figure out strategies, learn open world mechanics, and if you mess up, there's no consequence. And yes, the in-game calendar will be reset so we're not in the American Civil War anymore. We don't intend to reset the map on occasion. It's just we're going to do it this one time. Just so we can, make sure that nothing is broken in those 2 weeks. So it's also a testing period, so you're allowed to mess up. And all that great stuff. Do I want to hit the right arrow? Do I want to hit the right arrow? I'm going to hit the right arrow.
That's a typo, right?
No, that's not a typo. And there you have it. And yes, this release date is set in stone. There's no reason that we won't be able to have it done by then unless something like critical comes up, but it should be good.
If you start shitting yourself again or something like that.
Yeah, that did happen. Don't say that, James J. Bowie. Yeah, that
James
is the...
J. Blowy?
No, I said Bowie.
Yeah.
All right, so that is...
happen again.
So that is basically the end of that. Yeah, I will send the slideshow to people. That was a good burp. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions at this point, then feel free to ask. Otherwise, that is it for the presentation. You're free to go if you need to. Good luck in the St. Nicholas siege later today. Hopefully the server doesn't explode.
The server is going to explode.
Server will die
Is
instantly.
this release date public?
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask.
Yeah, I mean,
Game.
this is Nation
Okay.
Highcom. I was just pinged by Suga saying that the siege is in 13 minutes. That's hilarious.
Oh, that's kind of crazy.
Well, the rally is at least.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I hope you have backup plans for that siege.
And I'm going to go back to this because I like that.
Siege D's.
All right, but yeah, if anyone has any questions, I see Double's already pinging me. Loot boxes? What the hell? No, we're not doing loot boxes.
We're not EA.
50 Robux each?
Will hurricanes have the capability of sinking ships? The answer is, well, yeah, because storms can sink ships. This is why capsizing exists. If you tilt too far to the side, you're going to fall over.
In that case, waves need to be bigger, though.
Waves are bigger. Can nations
There
have
should
admin
be
groups for the
bigger.
role IDs and permissions instead of using main group IDs? If I was going to do that, then every nation would have to do that, and I don't really see the need for that. Civilians I didn't really cover here, but basically civilians are going to spawn in their own region, and they will be able to buy ships, like the smaller ships, for free, but they will have guns on them, and they'll have access to weapons and all. So the civilian region will be off on its own, and then only the smart civilians will be able to escape. And yes, it's basically the press ganging region. There won't be sudden squalls. That's not going to happen. Random stuff like that is actually more frustrating than entertaining. Anchor functionality in shallow/reefs, it's not really a priority right now, Matthew. Sorry. There's a lot of other stuff that needs to be done. Someone asked me in DMs if civilian ships will be more like as common as they were before. I mean, probably not, because they're all going to be stuck in their own region. The victory being in the game is kind of just like a coolness factor and not really intended for line battles, because there isn't enough people for line battles to begin with, really.
Well, the bigger question is, are you going to make the victory 1765 or the 1805 one?
1805, buddy.
No.
Nerd.
You're increasing
No,
the-
not happening.
Another person asked in DMs about an India man. We do have Vidence who's going to make one. I don't know if it's going to happen immediately when open world drops or after. Probably after.
Who cares about India men? We want India women.
And yes, like I said before, whether we add the victory or not depends on if the 74-gun Temeraire ship of the line actually
You see, Vidence,
doesn't explode.
if you make the victory, you can do the pre-refit.
I don't think Dents wants to make the victory. Maybe
Get
he
away
does.
from me.
Yeah, see?
If you are making it in the 1805 version, well, then I will sacrifice myself to make it. We want the pre-refit. We need it.
El
We
Bozo.
require it.
L. Well, keep in mind, we do have ship customization already. It is possible to change the models. So we could just add the stern gallery style and give it a balcony.
We are meowing.
Just import the victory from battle sales.
That won't work. I mean, it'd work, but you wouldn't be able to walk on it.
And it be flat.
Refit 60 gunner Constitution. What?
USS Prostitution.
Did the Connie have 60? No, we're not. No, the Constitution will have 54 guns, not 60. Is the Pirate Conclave still in the game? I assume you mean the Pirate Hideout? Yes, it is. Although it was deleted from the map randomly, so we have to add it back.
Also, there's one ship that you missed that we will probably be adding.
The Terror is not being added immediately.
No, it's not being added, but I am building it, and it will be in the game at some point.
And yes, Tommy, who is already done with the Swan, is now working on the HMS Terror, which is a mortar ship. That's all I'll say on that. Someone asked in DMs if we'll get bigger cannons in the future. Probably not. Cannons only really went up to 42 pounders, so that's going to be as big as they get. We do have 68 pounder carronades as well, but that's pretty much it. How many ships are planned for the game? We do have a list. It's the current ships, and then we have the the Swan, the Mahanesa, the Armide, and then we're going to add a couple more. There's going to be multiple smaller ships. There's going to be multiple trade ships, and then we'll have ships like the Temeraire, the Constitution, the Indefatigable, which is a Risée frigate of the Ardent class. And yeah.
We really should have recorded this.
Hotshot was never used. It's not going to be added.
It was only really used on forts. Well,
And yes,
in
the
forts.
staircase on the Ontario will be fixed at some point after open world drops. I have a bunch of things to do with that, like that. There's some visual issues with the Endymion and the Ardent, and then I need to add the Orlop tech to the alert. Fires aren't going to change, but magazine explosions are definitely something I want to do because entire ship go boom is hilarious.
L'Oreal moment.
And then finally, someone asked the question: ship interiors. If the game doesn't explode, but we'll go for another minute if anyone has final questions, and then we'll pull out of here because the St. Nicholas siege is starting soon. The game is probably as optimized as it's going to be. There are probably some places we can do better, but for the most part, it's going to be...
Oh no, the map can be optimized.
Well, yeah, the map can be.
Did
Starting
you delete
wallet...
the 500 fish models, Riv?
No.
Oh?
Starting wallet for players, probably 500 pounds. You're welcome, Mr. Liam Easty. Someone asked if mortar rounds will have splash damage. Yeah, they're gonna have charges. They will explode. You won't be able to loot corpses. The game is not set up for you to have to like buy weapons over and over again. You can donate from your wallet to your nation. All right. We'll wrap it up here. Thank you guys for coming, even though most people are already gone. So yeah, good luck in St. Nicholas, which is starting in just a few minutes here. And yeah, may the wind be word.
The ward of the wind of the night.